I'm Mateo Presatera. I live on White Place. I'm an 8th grader at the Pierce School. I don't feel safe walking home alone on the evenings in Brookline Village. Before Netta, I walk alone and feel safe. I don't feel safe because people are smoking pot outside of my house on a daily basis. I see people urinating on the street. Brookline has changed. It's not just me. The 8th grade social studies class, we're doing a project on community issues. In my class, we were giving the options in between affordable housing, overcrowding in schools, and Netta. We decided that Netta was the biggest problem, and we created a survey to ask Brookline High School students how Netta has impacted their lives. We have 88 responses so far, and 28% of high schoolers see people using marijuana on a daily basis, and 10% have never seen it. And 82% of those respondents say that the people that they saw using marijuana were between 15 and 17 years old. This shows that people of all ages are concerned about the impact of Netta in our society. Thank you.
Gilman, can you hear?
Yes.
Yeah, Jane Gilman, town meeting member, precinct 3. I want to take the conversation in a slightly different direction. The petitioners here and people who spoke in support of them represent several different precincts across town. So this is not restricted to precinct 6. It is about the character of our town and our decision making that determines the character in our town. Now, I don't care if Netta's revenue goes down. I really don't. What I care about is the quality of life here. And our elected officials and people on advisory committee are responsible for making decisions that protect us. If you think about, there's something very weird about this discussion in that we also are debating in town meeting limiting electric scooters. We have not heard from lobbyists. We do not have outside interests infiltrating our mail list because they're worried about their profits. So what is it about Netta? Now, Netta has a very big operation, yet they want special consideration. They don't want us to restrict the hours. And they do not want us to limit them. Now, I don't want to be bullied by Netta. I want Brookline to tell Netta what we want and not to get pushed around by them, and I'm feeling pushed around by them. I feel that what's really going on here is greed, corporate greed and greed in our town. It's like a poison arrow that has been shot into our midst. If all you care about is money, it's real easy to make a decision. But if you care about other things, like community life, like safety for our children, and long-established community values in our town, you take a second look. So Brookline needs revenue, I get that. But at what cost? Are you willing to sell out because it makes our revenues look good? Or to let Netta brag about their philanthropic donations in the hopes that we'll have a softer heart towards them? I think we can do better, and I expect our officials to take care of us. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your service. I'm Lauren Bernard. I'm a Precinct 8 town meeting member and a Brookline resident for almost 20 years. So I'd like to begin by saying that I was hearing a number of complaints that sounded quite outlandish about Netta and the neighborhood, Precinct 6 neighborhood. Having been a proponent of recreational marijuana and the very substantial revenue anticipated for the town, I was very skeptical of these complaints, and I wanted to see, as I believe it was Amanda who said, demonstrable incidents of nuisance. So I went on a little investigation of my own. And this was my experience Saturday night 4 weeks ago. Fact, and I want to be clear here that let me assure you that these impacts are real and not perceived, as that was also expressed a little while ago. Fact, I was groped by a man carrying a Netta bag who walked very close to me and then ran away when I shouted. Fact, I approached 2 police officers to complain, but they were too busy with traffic control to speak with me. Fact, I was solicited to buy pot repeatedly, 3 times. Fact, I was spit on 1 time when I refused. Fact, I observed 2 adults reselling to minors. Fact, I saw minors, looked to me like high schoolers, standing outside waiting to buy. Fact, I saw one instance of public urination, and I will qualify this, he was carrying a Netta bag. Fact, I observed at least a dozen people smoking on the streets, i.e. public consumption, and in nearby parks, particularly Emerson Gardens. Fact, where I dined that evening, the owner said that she has to kick out inebriated people who smoke pot in her restrooms, and more she's losing business from families who used to dine in her restaurant before Netta went to adult use. These are facts, and they happened to me. Bottom line, for the first time ever, I felt unsafe in Brookline as a woman alone. I urge the town to revisit the host community agreement, to seriously consider recommending favorable action on these 3 special town meeting warrant articles for reduced hours, appointment only, and review by a committee before any subsequent licenses are issued. We desperately need more responsible regulation.
Hi, thank you for having us, and thank you for taking the time to hear our concerns. My name is Seth Barrett. I'm a 52-year resident of Brookline. I live and work in Precinct 6. My business is Rare Restoration on the corner of Washington and Davis, and my home is on the corner of Emerson and Davis. I spend nearly my entire day in the village, and my shop provides me with a bird's eye view of Old Harvard Square, which is the center of Brookline Village. I want to make it clear before anything else that I am not anti-Netta and I am not anti-weed. In fact, as a business owner and as a person, I appreciate the vibrancy, the diversity, the youthful energy, and the growth that our sleepy little village is experiencing. And with the new medical buildings nearing completion, I expect even more in terms of those trends. I am here tonight because along with this growth, our neighborhood is experiencing difficulties. Some of the biggest problems we're having are public consumption, public intoxication, public misbehavior, and seemingly zero police response to the issue. This is absolutely a challenge during the day and affects my business negatively in a myriad of ways, but I am most concerned about the evenings. Under the cover of darkness, with reduced police presence and most retail locations closed, public consumption and outright partying becomes a real tangible problem here in the village. All the statistics in the world cannot quantify what it feels like to have your neighborhood go from a sleepy hamlet to a party zone practically overnight. I wish the best for Netta. I want the best for their investors, for their employees, and for their vision. But I want the town to supply some constraints that will help us to take back our neighborhood in the evenings and have the kind of peaceful calm that the rest of Brookline is afforded. Because just like everyone else here, we pay exorbitant taxes for the privilege to live in such a special place, and we would like to reap that reward, especially when it's time for our children to go to
Hi,
bed.
my name is Sloan Furness. I live at 10 White Place. I have 2 daughters, 6 and 9, who I had to drag here tonight. To be honest, I didn't plan on speaking tonight, and I'm tired of coming to these meetings, but this situation really needs to change. I want to address a few points that were made, and that's the reason for me coming up to speak, because I think I've made my point about nuisance and illegal activity. In terms of the illegal activity, Netta said that there was no change in illegal activity. I don't actually see how that's possible, because I've lived on White Place for 8 years. I called the police department, or it was actually the fire department, from what I remember, one time, because I had some gas from my HVAC system in 2013. I did not call once when it was open for medical use. I have called, you could check out the police records, but it's gotta be 20 to 30 times. For all the things I've seen. So it's been public consumption. I mean, I see it weekly. I see belligerent customers. There were several of us on White Place last week. I was trying to congratulate Mateo for being so brave. And we saw a young man who got very belligerent. He was belligerent to the police too when they came. When I call the police, I make sure that I actually see it and smell it. Last week, I called on Monday, and they caught the man. He was smoking out of an apple, but that was the first, to my knowledge, they've ever caught them, because usually they just can't get there in time. They are overburdened. In terms of the nuisance, for months I've tried to work with Netta. They, in June said, so I live, actually, I'm a direct abutter, so I can see from my bedroom and from my girls' room and our guest bedroom, I can see directly into the parking lot. The picture that was shown from this past weekend, I have never seen it that quiet ever on a Friday or Saturday night. Just for the record, it's usually packed, and I could see it from my bedroom. I've had some problems with, they actually told me that in June, they said, you know, we're repaving because we're getting ready to open the lot. That would help improve my situation. That didn't happen. You know, everybody still lines up there. They told me that the line was going to go to in front of the power station, so it did temporarily, but then in September it moved back. Nobody mentioned it to me. It's directly outside my bedroom window. There's also, I've been trying to work with them. They've been very nice to me. They always get back to me, but nothing has changed. I've talked to them about operational things like trash, recycling. I was woken up at 11:10 last night. I get up at around 6. I've got small kids. I have to get to school and I work. And I was woken up at 11:10 with a lot of banging from the back door and breaking down recycling boxes. And then they take out the trash, which is very noisy from our bedrooms. So that's, to summarize, I'm going on too much, I think. But you can see this is an issue that affects my family and my street a lot personally. But I want to touch on the restricting access point that's been made. I'll wrap it up right now. About the benefits of marijuana to people who don't necessarily have a prescription. I'm very empathetic to people, even if they use it, say, under a recreational pretense because they have anxiety, they have depression. I have a type 1 diabetic husband. He calls CVS days or weeks in advance. He picks up his prescription. They close at 6 o'clock on the weekends, and they close at 9. My daughter, who's in the audience, was born with 4 heart defects. She required life-saving medication her first year of life. And you know what? I got there before 5. The pediatrician closed at 5. They were closed on the weekends. I made sure she got her medication. So I think that people could get to an appointment. I think they can get there before 7.
I'm Ana Otero. I'm a 16-year Brookline resident, and I live on White Place behind Neta. I voted for legalization of marijuana. I want to make sure everyone knows that. My husband and I came to Brookline because we fall in love with a diverse and caring and safe community and the small businesses of Brookline. I have personally witnessed a significant increase in loitering, littering, panhandling. In addition, I have seen what I never saw in my 16 years in Brookline Village: public urination, public consumption of marijuana, and sales of marijuana on the streets. We call the police weekly to report illegal activities. As I was coming to this meeting today, there was a man smoking a joint in front of my house. I did not have time to call the police. He walked away. I do not feel safe. I do not want to live in a police state. I do not want to live in a police state. Please do not have police walking up and down the street all the time. On Saturday midday, my family and I were at the intersection of Washington and Harvard, where the clock is. A white middle-aged man, staggering, that could barely stand straight, who reeked of marijuana, approached us and asked us where he could find the liquor store. My husband gave him directions. The man looked confused. He tried to reply but could barely speak. He seemed belligerent. And for a second, I was scared for myself and my family. He finally stumbled off. This is not illegal. I cannot report it. The police will never know about this, but families and children in Brookline Village experience this on a daily basis. This never happened before Neta opened for recreational adult use. I do not feel safe. You are hearing from Brookline residents of all ages about why the way Neta operates does not work. It does not work. I believe by implementing the right policies, Brookline will be able to create a marijuana industry that will integrate with Brookline's character and preserve the nature of our neighborhoods. You have the power to change this. Please support the Warrant Article.
My name is Eddie Benjamin. I've lived in Brookline for 26 years, essentially my whole life, and I speak to you today as a neighbor and a homeowner on Park Street. First, I want to say I'm in love with this town. For quite some time, my philosophy has been Brookline till I die. I even proposed to my wife in St. Mark's Park. I got married at my home in Brookline. Albert's florist did our flowers. Poppy hemmed my wife's dress. We celebrated at Hamilton's. Even Raw D catered our wedding. Of course, there was J.P. Lick's ice cream cake. I know that when, for my mother's sake, I have kids, they'll go to Pierce. When I look out here, I see my mom and my dad, or folks just like my mom and my dad, my Bubby and Zadie. This is like a tense Thanksgiving, which I'm sure it will be in just a few weeks. I'm not just Brookline obsessed. I hate to think that Brookline is changing, but it is, and it's not just scooters. I'm scared that the nursing home on Park Street across from where I live is turning into a hotel. I'm terrified about the 200,000 square foot hospital that will undoubtedly bring more traffic and more people to the Brookline Village. I'm nervous about whatever it is they're building on Cypress and Route 9. I can't say I'm excited about the impact that a dispensary will have in Coolidge Corner. I'm scared that in the next 60 some years that I've got to live here, Brookline will become unrecognizable, or worse, like Cambridge. Brookline is developing. We're getting busier and busier. It's not just the dispensaries, it's everything. To put it simply, this is what happens as cities grow. But in the face of growth and development, we've got to maintain our Brookline-ness. And what is that? We're progressive socially, from our policy on bicycling to education to our multicolored crosswalks and more. We're progressive economically. For example, we have an openness to marijuana businesses and the enormous amount of taxes we receive. We're progressive politically. We may lower the voting age. Look at how engaged we all are here today. How do we maintain balancing our Brookline-ness with our real, ever-growing anxiety over development, increased traffic, and more? We have discussions as a town. We listen to each other instead of shouting at each other. We engage with businesses. When my wife and I stopped by Wild Goose Chase just the other day and asked their feelings about the dispensary opening up in Pier 1, they felt a lot better after real discussions with the operator about where the line would go and more. We ask our town administrators and elected officials to address and come up with solutions to alleviate our concerns. I speak to you here with an interesting perspective, since I am both a die-hard Brookline resident and have also worked for NETA for 6 years now. I got involved when I started going to these same town meetings in 2014 to speak up against local opposition in support of a dispensary, NETA, trying to get a license in Brookline Village, since my mother and grandmother, both lifetime Brookline residents, found such relief from chemotherapy treatments when using cannabis. As a lifetime Brookline resident, I've built NETA into what it is today, working hand in hand with Amanda and an amazing team. Now, as your neighbor and someone who understands the workings of NETA, much of what we're demanding of our officials is counterproductive. The warrant articles are not smart solutions. Shorter hours will add to traffic and to lines. Simply, this ask should not be confused with a solution to any of our concerns. More concentrated people over a shorter time. More concentrated people. Yep, I'm wrapping up. More concentrated people over a shorter amount of time is not the goal. Demanding an appointment-only model, and this is the last point, play that out for a minute. The people who are currently waiting peacefully in the parking lot will arrive at NETA, be told they need to make an appointment, and will go into Brookline Village. I don't want that to happen, and neither do you. If we're concerned about the neighborhood impact of crowds on the village, an appointment-only model will make it worse. Thank you so much.
A 25-year resident of, I'm a 25-year resident of Brookline Village. I live at the Brook House. I'm also a 15-month employee of NETA. And coincidentally, and this does inform my opinion somewhat, I'm a survivor of cancer during a time when you could not legally go in and purchase anything, and you had to ask a friend who asked a friend who asked a friend, and you didn't know what you were going to get, and it could have had a fungus in it or whatever, something that would have just been a challenge to somebody going through chemo. I park in this town in a parking space that I rent and have rented for 25 years because you cannot park overnight, and everyone knows in this town you actually have to make an arrangement for your car. So sometimes I listen to the conversations about parking and I think, well, the businesses have a valid point about parking, but the residents, it seems to me, would all actually need to have some kind of arrangement for their car. I have not experienced any problems driving in and out any more than usual. I mean, I live half a mile from Boston's biggest financial engine in Longwood area. Traffic goes tough. Traffic's tough at the intersection of Brookline Ave and Route 9. I can't see that it would be made any better by forcing our volume of traffic into less hours. And certainly, I mean, even the night hours that we're open give us some relief from the traffic that, you know, NETA brings in, despite all our efforts to, you know, to get people to not drive in. I take politics, world politics, and national politics very much to heart. And this has been a very, very tough year for a liberal girl. But when I go into work, huh?
Let's stay on the topic.
Well, I go into work, and I get actually, through the diversity program there and through the people that work there, an actual picture of a world that works. A diverse group of people, really under a lot of pressure. They know how, they've been followed to their cars, they've been followed home, they've been photographed, they come into the building crying. They're concerned that they're going to lose their jobs if the hours are cut. When I tell you these people work hard, this place grinds you into a powder. No one expected this volume. A lot of people didn't make it, they just really burned out. This is, sure. I just feel like if our village were to actually embrace what's going on there a little bit more, we actually all might be better off for it.
Hello, my name is Joan Taglerini. I've lived in Brookline for over 21 years, both in Washington Square and Coolidge Corner neighborhoods. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I support the 3 warrant articles that are currently under your consideration. Clearly, there's an issue that needs to be dealt with here. I won't presume to repeat any of the issues that others have described today. We wouldn't be here otherwise. However, where there is disagreement is in what to do about it. The dispensaries propose that spending money for additional signage, additional police enforcement, additional cleanup resources, and other similar measures are sufficient to address the issues. As an initial matter, I would say they are not efficient to do so because the NETA presentation elaborated on a number of things being done, and clearly there are still many, many issues. More importantly, I would argue that these sort of quote-unquote solutions merely address the symptoms of what is happening as a result of these large and unbridled level of operations. Conversely, the warrant articles currently under consideration are intended to reasonably and more directly address the causes of these symptoms. Rather than create an untenable situation and throw money at it in an attempt to mitigate or fix it, we should look to avoid creating the untenable situation in the first place. The causes in this case are just too much for the areas in which they are located. The warrant articles seek not to drive these businesses out of town, but to manage the conduct of these businesses, much like we do with every other business in town, such that they can continue to be profitable, but not at the expense of the town in which they are located. On one additional note, I sent an email to the town regarding the warrant articles, and the person writing back to me said, the town's financial projections presume a level of tax revenue from marijuana sales over the next 3 years, without which we're likely to see an additional or increased tax override. As an initial matter, this begs the question of why such extensive revenue projections were built into the town budget in the first place before these operations were fully operational. But more importantly, to suggest that town citizens should simply swallow their opposition or endure the hardships they are facing because of a threat of raised taxes is unacceptable to me and should not be a basis for continuing business practices that are out of sync with town citizenry. I think any medical professional would tell you that you should address causes and not symptoms, because symptoms are bound to resurface again and again in the same or in different ways if the underlying causes are not addressed. Yes. My fear is that if this subcommittee and other town committees don't address the root causes of why we're here today, I think that we will find that we will continually be arguing into the future over the symptoms that will continue to occur and that we've let happen. Thank you.
My name's Winnie Armand, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I've been living in Brookline in Precinct 8 for over 15 years, and I've learned a lot, and I actually appreciate both sides of the presentations and being able to hear everyone speak. My concern has to do with 2 main issues, our youth and our community. With respect to our youth, though cannabis sale is for only those 21 and older, the amount of cannabis use among adolescents is increasing, while their perception of risk of cannabis use is decreasing. And you'll forgive me because I am a physician, so I'm going to share with you that the ongoing brain development occurs through about age 24. Early significant cannabis use has demonstrated negative effects on teens, including on motivation, memory, and other cognitive functions, as well as brain changes on MRI scans that can persist even after cannabis use. I have no problem with responsible, private, adult consumption. My concern is our youth. Cannabis has been demonstrated to be a gateway drug in youth, and that's meaning that those who use cannabis regularly at a young age are more likely to go on to use harder substances. And though addiction is not as common in cannabis than with other substances, those that start at a young age in the teen years are more likely to suffer from addiction. So I'm concerned about locating our retail recreational cannabis stores in highly densely populated areas where we have a lot of families and children, Brookline Village, as well as the consideration of the Coolidge Corner site. Without careful restrictions, these are locations where so many children walk. Often younger children feel uncomfortable. The smell bothers them because unfortunately there is a lot of public consumption, which my whole family has experienced. So the other issue is that the hotspots for our teens, I have 2 teenagers, and the hotspots for them to hang out are in Brookline Village and Coolidge Corner. So with respect to our community, traffic and parking in Coolidge Corner, as you know, is worsening. The times that I do need to drive from Coolidge Corner to Brookline Village, that 1 mile can now take 10 to 15 minutes. I can't understand why we would consider a site in Coolidge Corner when clearly there are issues that we need to address and fix for the community in Brookline Village. I believe I can speak for many who voted to legalize recreational marijuana, that the vote was based on the trust that there would be proper planning, judicious deployment of retail shops away from congested commercial areas and schools, and with full responsiveness to our community concerns that arise as they have so vocally at Brookline Village. Yes, thank you. So the last thing is that I think that we can work together, and I wonder if with these articles, could we consider proceeding with the articles and reassessing in 6 months? Because I think that NETA wants to succeed, and I think our community wants to have our home, and I think that would not be unreasonable, but I beseech you to consider highly Article 3 and not opening another store till we can fix the shop issues that we have currently. Thank you for your time.
Thank you everybody for having me. My name is Joseph Martino. I live over at 10 Wellman Street. Yep, can you hear me? So I live over at 10 Wellman Street over at Coolidge Corner. So I've lived in Brookline for a little over a year now, and I'm grateful to be here every single day. It's such an amazing quality of life, and it's my favorite place I've ever lived, easily. Today I wanted to talk about my work family and what it's like to work at NETA. It's basically the weirdest and most lovable group of people I've ever worked with. Basically everyone here feels like they could be the star of their own sitcom show, especially Jonathan. You have people from all walks of life and opportunity here. Many of us are art school kids still trying to find our way. Some of us are from extreme poverty and didn't know where our next meals were coming from, excuse me. Some of us are cancer survivors trying to impart our wisdom onto new patients. Literally the only thing we have in common is empathy. When Simone hired me, I quickly discovered that empathy was the only prerequisite to working here. We each approach the job with our own style, but it all comes from a place of wanting to give back. The job is such an amazing opportunity for all of us, and I fear that if we scale back, my work family will be ripped apart. Many of us were given a second chance with this job, and we fight tooth and nail every day to make the world a better place. I'd love to invite the Brookline community to actually come into the dispensary and see who we help every day. I guarantee that you'll be surprised by the warmth and hospitality that we give. Together with this community, we have become global industry leaders, opening people's perspective, easing people's pain, and making people's lives better. I want to thank Brookline for allowing us to even be here in the first place, and I hope that we can set the bar even higher together. And thank you.
First, I'd like to start off by saying I am not a Brookline resident, but I would like to offer a unique perspective to this whole ordeal.
Who are you, sir?
My name is Jack Elwood, and I am a disabled veteran who works as the shift security lead for Daylight at NETA. Along with that, I'd like to apologize in advance. I don't do well speaking in front of crowds. I also don't do well opening up about my own personal experiences, so I appreciate your patience with me. I'll try to keep my yarn a little bit shorter. That being said, I'd just kind of like to say I'm here as a disabled veteran in response to the legal access to cannabis, more specifically the potential of shortened hours of business at NETA. This is going to be more impactful for more than just Brookline and its residents who still do support us and those who don't support us. I'd like to paint for you all a mild picture, if you don't mind. 2007, I enlisted in the military, 1st Armored Division, 1st Combat Team, Iron Troop 181. And in 2009, I lost 2 very dear friends of mine. 2 very close friends of mine and comrades, and I attempted to end my own life. That being said, I was very thankful that the attempt was unsuccessful, and that, I was able to pull myself together. And then in 2012, when I exited the military, my life quickly spiraled out of control, and I'm what many people in this community would have considered a delinquent or a vagabond, in that I was a heroin addict for many years. I was homeless. I did not have the help provided to me in rural Virginia growing up in exceptional poverty. Sorry, I'm on the mic there. But I just wanted to take a moment to say that a fellow veteran and sponsor introduced me to cannabis and its ability to change your mind for PTSD. For the first time in many years, I was able to take control of my own anxiety, of my own issues, of my own doubts in my life, and grow as a man, as a person, as an individual. And I would highly, highly recommend everyone in this room, because I see a lot of faces in here, no offense, that are significantly older than myself, to take that opportunity to listen to the stories of the younger members of this community who are reaching out in desperation and hope for you to change your mind and express your help and gratitude that we want to provide for you. Many of you may not know me, but if you come onto the lot at NETA, I'm going to greet you with a smile, ask you how you're doing, how your day is. Yes, sir. Give me one moment and I will finish up for you. I would like to finish off by stating this is my family. I moved to Boston in August 2016 after being clean for about a year. I've been clean for almost 3.5, and I'd have to say a lot of that is a testament to the fact that cannabis saved my life. Cannabis opened up the doors for me to be able to heal as an individual, as a person. And for you to say that you want to limit the access, the hours that this place is available for us is wrong. I'm not saying that we're perfect and we have issues that we need to address, but we are trying to work with you. And we're asking you to work with us, but not limit the access of cannabis for our purposes, for people who need it, for medication, for mental instability.
Thank you. Please conclude.
Thank you, sir. You have a lovely night.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Davis, resident of 125 Park Street, town meeting member, precinct 10. I would like to give you some statistics, but these are more statistics, but these are low-tech statistics, and they have to do with Sanctuary. Sanctuary, as you know, is going to be located at 1351 Beacon. There are 3 apartment buildings that are above Sanctuary, immediately to the right of Sanctuary, and immediately to the left of Sanctuary. And doing a low-tech study of the names on the mailboxes of these 4-story walk-ups, I come out to 63 residents, 63 residents both on top of Sanctuary and immediately to the right of Sanctuary and immediately to the left of Sanctuary. And I think that these folks who live here, these 63 folks, and it comes and goes, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less, I think that they're entitled to have come back home from work or from school and to come back and to have a peaceful evening, just as I'm sure you folks have a peaceful evening. I think that they are entitled on weekends to be able to sleep in a little bit longer. I think that's a good thing. So I'd like you to take those statistics in mind. Finally, there's one other factor that I know this is not on the agenda, but I do have a one-day nightmare, and that is what's going to happen when Sanctuary opens, and they're open on Marathon Day.
Davis Avenue.
Thank you.
I live on Davis Avenue by the corner of White Place, so I'm very close to Netta. I want to point out one thing. I think everybody who's spoken in favor of Netta tonight is a Netta employee, not just a resident of Brookline. So I think that's striking. Also, I've looked at the Netta host community agreement, and it says, establishment operations shall not create nuisance conditions in parking areas, sidewalks, streets, and areas surrounding its premises and adjacent properties. Nuisance includes, but is not limited to, disturbances of the peace, open public consumption of marijuana or marijuana products, excessive pedestrian or vehicular traffic, odors emanating from the establishment's premises, electrical lighting, illegal drug activity under state or local law, harassment of passersby, excessive littering, excessive loitering, illegal parking, excessive loud noises, excessive citation for violations of state traffic laws and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. I think Netta is violating virtually all of these with, what you've heard tonight from all the neighbors who've talked about what they've seen, and I've seen it too, and the open public consumption in Emerson Park where my kids play. I now worry about my kids walking around the neighborhood where I always felt safe. When I bought a house in Brookline Village 20 years ago, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that the largest drug operation in the entire country would open a block away. That was a Brookline bank. It was a bank. I never expected in my wildest dreams that something like this could happen. And even a few years ago, when Netta was opening as a medical marijuana thing, we had from the special town meeting report of November 2013, it said, under community concerns, the zoning bylaw committee was guided by a vision of an RMD that operated as a nondescript office within a larger building, possibly a medical office building, and that had no direct access to the street. The state regulations also limit signs and other visible evidence of a RMD. Others may be concerned that RMDs will look like head shops from the 1970s or will be prominent freestanding buildings, such as the Brookline Bank building in Brookline Village. So that was like the one building that was warned as something people were concerned about and was not an appropriate location. And then that became the RMD, and lo and behold, a few years later, now it's open access to unregulated, not medical, just recreational marijuana. I mean, how did this happen to our town? All right, I'm just saying, I never would have bought a house there 20 years ago if I had known that the town was going to do this to us. I can't even imagine how this is acceptable when the CVS on Washington Street was not even allowed to occupy its full space because that was going to be drawing too much traffic to the area, even though they have a parking lot. Netta has no parking lot, thousands of customers a day, and how is this okay? It's all about the money, and I'm telling you, this money may look really good now, but when the home values start to plummet because the neighborhood is going to hell, and when more stores move out of their storefronts, that we have a lot of empty storefronts already, you'll see that this...
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Warren. I'm a co-petitioner for the special town meeting and the 3 warrants. I'd like to take a step back. There's been a lot of passionate testimony and discussion, and I really want to kind of get us back on what we're talking about with the special town meeting. This is about volume. It's a volume issue. It's not about the product. It's not about the people buying the product. It's not about the company that is selling the product. They're a high-quality company, and they run a very tight ship with their operation. This is about citing the largest retail cannabis shop in the country in Brookline Village. It wasn't anybody's intent. We didn't expect it, but here's where we are. We're not asking Netta to move. I heard that tonight. We're not asking Netta to shut down. We're not asking Sanctuary Medicinals to move. We're not asking Sanctuary Medicinals to not occupy the space when they're given their license. We're asking town meeting and the advisory committee to look at this from a volume perspective. We need to turn down the volume, not necessarily in total, but during the peaks. We are trying to squeeze 2 pounds of flour in a 1 pound bag, and it ain't working. So these warrant articles really are about helping to regulate the volume over a period of time that smooths it out for everybody. There is a solution here that works for customers, it works for the providers, and it works for the neighbors. Reasonable people can find a solution here. And we believe that we have put forward 3 warrant articles, ours, appointment only with pre-reservation, order ahead, that we believe will help alleviate the problem. So we are asking that this subcommittee recommend positive action on each of the individual warrant articles. And I really do believe, I've spent a lot of time on this, I've gotten a lot of praise and I've gotten a lot of heat, but there needs to be a solution here. We can't take revenue on the backs of neighbors. It's just not worth it. Thank you.
Members, my name is David Gladstone. I'm a resident, 35 years, of Precinct 16. I am Senior Vice President of the Brookline Chamber. I'm a member of the Brookline Business Association. I'm a member of Coolidge Corner Merchants Association. And I have 18 years of experience in big box retailing. And I've been working in banking 18 years beyond that. What has been said tonight, people have feelings, they have causes, certainly things have been happening. There's been talk of regulation, there's talk of all these 3 town meeting articles, and what I haven't seen and what I haven't heard, and this was discussed at our government affairs meeting at the chamber, was compromise, was conversations, people with the select board and certain committees and neighbors and Netta having proactive conversations to be able to solve these problems. We're trying to go right to clamping down and regulating hard. And this is a legal business. It was passed in Massachusetts. It was passed in Brookline. 60% of the people who voted passed this, wanted to have it in Brookline. And yes, only 30% of the voters came out. But it's a function of whoever comes out and votes, they help make decisions. Okay, hold on. But in any event, where I want to go with this is the following. The Chamber's taking the following position. The Brookline Chamber of Commerce has commented on warrant articles 15, 9, 29, and 21 that have been filed. However, the Chamber has not had an opportunity to vote on warrant articles that pertain to recreational marijuana, which is the third town meeting, Articles 1, 2, and 3. The Brookline Chamber of Commerce advocates for businesses. Articles 1 to 3 would diminish and restrict a legally run business. Town articles that compromise the operation of a business are unnecessary. We believe that the Select Board, Netta, and residents of Brookline can work together to resolve conflicts. If all parties are willing to hear concerns and provide viable solutions, the involved businesses, the residents, have an opportunity to create a positive outcome for all. Using the established process in place for licensing and overseeing recreational marijuana business in Brookline is the best solution. Now, I want to answer one question. Tonight you asked the question about transportation, and you made the comment about the benefits parking district that got passed in Brookline Village. I was one of the people that helped drive that with Chris Dempsey. That was passed by town meeting in May. It was certified by the Secretary of State in July. People are asking the question, why hasn't a committee been constituted? The committee has not been constituted. How can they work on parking problems if the committee doesn't get constituted? I would challenge, and I would actually point out to Bernard Green, who's in the audience tonight, that we need to constitute that committee, and we need to study the parking problems which were existing in Brookline Village previous to Netter opening up, but yes, have gotten worse. But in addition to that, there's been a lot of construction going on, One Brookline Place, the hotel, and many other things. I say that compromise is the way to go. We shouldn't be warranting town meeting articles to regulate heavily. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gerald Dorothy Shaw. I have been a resident of Brookline for the past year. I'd like to open up my 2-minute segment by saying, welcome to the future, people. We're in a time of great change, as that has been mentioned before. One thing I would like to note is it's interesting living in Brookline for the past year, and it's an interesting dynamic living here, knowing that you can't park overnight and certain regulations. Another matter of fact is I am an employee of Netta, as you can tell by my cardigan, and I do take great pride in what I do, because what I do is I facilitate a way for people to heal, not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually as well. I'm originally from Jamaica. Might be a little off topic, but I believe in the Rastafarian doctrine. I believe that the marijuana plant is sacred. So what I'd like to open up with is just talking about marijuana as a medicine. It's like we're caught up on the recreational drive and what's happening now. Someone mentioned earlier 4,700 people, and that was false. Most we've had was 3,600, which is still a lot of people. But that just goes to show you the majority of people I see in my day-to-day life are Boston residents. And we also have to understand that this is a tourist city. Brookline has a very interesting possibility right now of really being a destination tourism place for Massachusetts, given the amount of traffic that we see. So some of the main themes that I've noticed from my fellow Brookline residents are the fact that we have issues with parking, public urination, and public consumption. So I'd like to take this time to actually offer you solutions. I'm all for the town meetings. I'm all for an open town hall setting. But if we're just talking in circles without any solutions being presented, we will never get forward. So it was already stated that we have restrooms on the facility at Netta. Now, clearly, I can't control everyone that comes into that building. But what I can do, and what I can tell you, is that we at Netta actually try our very hardest to mitigate those issues before they even leave the door. Something as simple as just asking someone if they want a receipt, or if they want to leave with their receipt. We would then take the receipt to make sure it doesn't end up outside in the public vicinity. One thing that I've noticed living here is on my walk from 263 Walnut Street, where I reside, to my job at Netta, there isn't enough public trash can receptacles. That's one easy solution that we can use to combat the issue of littering. There's about 1.4 million in the impact funds that's not being used right now. So really, as someone who supports Netta, what I'd like to say is, let's actually use those funds first before we actually go ahead and change the rules and actually backstep on what we've actually done in progression to welcome the future into Brookline. So what I would like to see is, especially in the neighborhood, especially since I live here, is I don't know why no one's talked about it before. If public consumption is such a big deal, why don't we actually go ahead of the curve and try to legally establish a place in the neighborhood where someone can publicly consume? I know it might be an unpopular opinion, but as someone who believes in the power of the plant and believes in my right to indulge in that plant, and one thing else I'd like to touch on is the fact that I've heard a lot of people say they don't feel safe in the neighborhood. How do you not feel safe just... How do you... try getting growth. I don't appreciate that someone would do that to you. But once again, we are not responsible for the bad people that come into that arena. What we can do is facilitate how we move forward. If public consumption is an issue, all right, I will conclude with this. If public consumption is an issue, I can't do anything about sexual harassment. I intensely apologize to you on that front because they are a patron of our establishment. But what I would like to see moving forward is a compromise between residents of this city to actually have somewhere that we can all be happy. So if someone's smoking on your property, you can say, hey, go around the block. There's cops there, and there's a legal place for you to smoke.
Hello, my name is Gerald Gillis. I'm an employee of Netta. I don't live in Brookline, I live in Brighton, which is a neighboring area. Now, I see all the issues that are at hand. They do make sense, they're logical. But some of the things that are being said in order to find solutions are illogical, in my greater opinion, in my own opinion, in my moral opinion, and my ethical opinion. Because there are people that do come into our dispensary that need more than just a few minutes, more than just an appointment that's going to be 5 to 10 minutes as what seems to be expected by the people in this crowd, by the great majority. And they come in and they need a consultation. They need to be sat down with in a specific office and given the information they need to consume whatever product they're purchasing from us without fear of harming themselves. Now, with an appointment-based model, they won't get that luxury. They won't get that knowledge. And that is going to affect usage and freedom, and it's going to affect the way people consume and live their lives. Imagine if you're working a shift past 7 o'clock, and your only option is to get your medical marijuana after 7 o'clock, and we close our doors at 7, and there's no other place for them to go. And this applies to recreational customers as well. That, to me, is very unethical and immoral and illogical and wrong to the people. And if it was truly a matter of greed between the people and the company that I'm working for, we wouldn't be fighting to keep our hours open and educate the people that come through our door. We would just be letting them come in and flow out as fast as we can so we get the biggest bang for our buck in the shortest amount of time, and that's clearly not the case. Another aspect I want to bring up is public urination. How are we to control what people do on the streets of Brookline when they're not in our facility? If you want us to control the streets of Brookline, we would have to double up, triple up, quadruple our staff, and then send them into the streets in order to mitigate and monitor your streets to make sure these things aren't happening. This can be said also for public consumption. There's no way for that to actually be monitored by us. And the issue at hand that's really heavily troublesome to me is cutting our hours. We've actually doubled, if not tripled in size for staff. How do you expect us to be able to cut back our hours to when they were medical with staff numbers in the multiple hundreds? When we were medical, they were not in the multiple hundreds. How would we divvy up those hours evenly amongst our coworkers without any demoralization or demotivation in order to work efficiently in this industry and actually help the people get what they need medically? On top of that, it's affecting livelihoods. There's mothers that come in that need this product in order to de-stress because they have too many kids, or they have some really outrageous kids. They have some kids, you know how it is. I see a lot of old people in this audience. I know you've had kids. Weed could help. I'm not trying to say go smoke weed. I'm just saying think about things from a different aspect. Empathize with people. I can empathize with you guys. I understand. I grew up in Norwood. I watched the demographic of my town change drastically between my high school years. It was a majority white-based town. And then the demographic switched up, and more of the city came towards my town. And it was no longer majority white. South Norwood is known as Little Brazil now. And there's nothing wrong with that. People are living their lives. Yes, of course. Now, the one thing I want to say before I conclude is there's a saying that I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with, live and let be. How are you living and letting be if you're just restricting and clamping down on an industry that's trying to help people free their minds and heal?
Good evening, my name is Susan Park. I am a co-petitioner for the 3 warrants for the special town meeting. I live in Precinct 2, and I do have some pictures I'd like to bring up and share with you. The first 2 warrants, limited hours and appointment only, will help to alleviate the parking chaos and unprecedented volume that was negatively affected neighbors of Netta. Excuse me. The 3rd warrant, the study committee, is critical. Before more cannabis shops are given licenses, Affected neighborhoods need to be assessed and what's not working. Go slow and assess how NETA is doing is good common sense best practice. 1351 Beacon Street in Coolidge Corner has less parking spaces than NETA's shop. NETA has had to use its parking lot for its 90-person customers snaked in the back of its store with the use of stanchions. 1351 Beacon is a repeat of NETA, but worse, because they don't have the designated parking lot and will have long lines with no place to put its customers. And the people will be spilling into the adjacent store, right outside the adjacent stores, alleys, and causing congestion on the sidewalk that is supposed to have mandatory 4 feet sidewalk path at all times. So the pictures I have before you are pictures of the 4 feet mandatory path that was included in the August 6, 2019 license agreement that the select board gave in the middle of the summer. And so number 23 in that license agreement states that there has to be a mandatory 4-foot path. So I went out today, and if you look at these pictures, the first one shows a young girl, probably at the age of 10 or 11, and she's just casually skating, and she pretty much takes up most of that space. Now, in that space, there's supposed to be 2 people. According to the license, it says that it's going to be a double-person line. The second picture has a tape measurement of the 4 feet path. So I just wanted to give that visual of how narrow that space is. This part of the sidewalk is actually more narrow, as we all know, than the Trader Joe's side. But I just wanted to show you what that looked like again. The next picture, Exhibit C, you can see two men who are, pretty large size or medium size, and they're casually walking, and you can see that they've totally stepped into that 4 feet mandatory path that's always supposed to be there. So you can see, like, for 2 people to be standing in that narrow space is really unrealistic. And then the last picture, if you look at that one, that's a picture of, he was probably a grandfather with a 12-year-old. And they're walking leisurely, and you can see how they're walking, and they also have leaked into that 4-foot mandatory path that's always supposed to be there. Okay. So these warrants will be instrumental in protecting the peace and family-friendly neighborhood in Coolidge Corner. We are wise to be prepared for the opening of another large recreational cannabis store. The Brookline Village neighborhood started seeing nuisance issues after recreational marijuana was sold at NETA. We will have the same impact in Coolidge Corner because Sanctuary Medicinals is 100% recreational. There are always 2 sides of the story. We have heard from NETA, their solution is to pay their way out of the problems they've created with a community impact fee. Now it's time to truly believe the impacted neighbors, families, students, the 8th grade boy who courageously came out tonight, and to know and to really feel how they're feeling. They're feeling the impact day in and day out. And unless common sense regulations are put in place, like these 3 reasonable, fair warrant articles, we're going to see the same thing again. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for being here and listening to all of this. My name is Linda Olson-Pelkey. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 2, and I just want to reflect on how we got here a little bit, because I think we got here with the warrant articles because people started noticing things happening in their neighborhood, and there wasn't a response that was adequate or timely enough. And that's unfortunate. But I do think it's extremely misguided by the neighbors to propose these particular solutions to what they perceive as the problem. I agree with the proponents who have said that limiting access is not a good idea. I mean, I guess even further back, why did we all vote to legalize cannabis in Brookline? Well, we didn't like mass incarceration. We knew the war on drugs was a failure, and we felt that this was a drug that was less harmful than alcohol, and people had a right to access it. So we went ahead and used our town